want to start mapping somewhere, we start with a shape file, which is the pinky red shape that you can see here. We send that off to a company that flies taking aerial photography all over Britain. We send that to them and they come back with all of these photographs that we're going to need to map that area. We purchase them off them. So the first step is to convert the 2D photographs into a 3D strip, which we can then map and plot out. The next step is triangulation. And what that does, when the plane's flying over, taking the photographs, it's not always going to be level. It might be banking one way or the other. It might be going slightly up, it might be going slightly down. So this step is going to eliminate all of these tilts and angles, and so that we get our level plane. The first thing we have to do is pick an identifiable point on the photograph. So I need to find a point, so I'm going to use this. So we've got two greens now, so that means it's found the right point. And I've just now got to go through, it's going to go through all of these photographs. So we've finished the triangulation, so we've now got a complete 3D strip of photographs, a consistent length of strip. So we're going to start plotting it now. So we can see on here we have two images. So what's going to happen is I'm going to bring down the 3D stereoscope. When I look through here, that's allowing both my eyes to see both of these images at the same time overlap, which gives it the 3D effect. So in this initial pass, we're going to plot all the man-made features that we can see on the strip. So I've started this road here. We're also going to pick out all of the things that you can see on this list here next to me on the wall. So we'll start with this. This is a main road here. So the first thing I'm going to do is tell the computer that it's a main road by selecting the main road layer. So because we've got a 3D strip now, we have to think and plot in 3D. So there's a wheel on the floor, which I'm using as well as just the mouse. I'm using the mouse to move left and right, but I'm using the wheel on the floor for when the road's going up and down hills. I'm moving it clockwise and anti-clockwise to control the height of the cursor as well. So we're tracing fully in 3D now. That's going to take quite a while to complete this section of the strip, but once we've done it, I zoom out a little bit, we end up with something that looks like this here. Anything, absolutely anything man-made that you can see on the photograph, you have to pick out and plot.
So once the photogrammetrists have finished plotting a chunk of data, they send it over to me, and it's my job to make this information legible and attractive to the map reader. At the moment, it's just a bunch of lines. Now, they're all highly detailed, but I need to make sense of what they are and what they interpret. So I like to work with the contours first, as this gives me a good initial overview of the land that we're working on. So the first thing I do is I give the contours the correct specification and turn everything else off. So as you can see, the valleys now look a lot more apparent, and you can kind of see a bit of the lay of the land. And then the next step is to apply the correct specification to every other feature that the photogrammetrists have plotted. So about in this 100 square kilometre region that the photogrammetrists have plotted, they've identified over 100 different features, and each one needs to be applied the correct specification. So here you can see I've already applied the dense woodland and woodland the correct colours, and there is some rough farmland and some farmland poking through. So you can already see the sort of bare bones of a map. And once the areas are done, I move on to the line features. So here you can see the road network has been added, some rights of way and some paths and tracks through the woodland and farmland. So once the area features and the line features are put in place, we finally put in the point features, such as trig points, cairns, wind turbines, etc. And then once they are also inserted, we put the text. So that's our spot height values, our contour values, as well as place names. So essentially at this point, we have all of the information in the correct specification, all visible and on our map. So now the real nuts and bolts of the cartographic editing can begin. So what I would do is systematically sweep through the entire new bit of data, looking at each grid square, so one kilometre by 1 kilometre in fine detail with a fine tooth comb, to make sure we're happy with the data and that every single feature is legible and visible. So for every grid square, there are many things to keep an eye out. Anything that is being obscured by any other map feature that needs to be more visible, we will display slightly just so everything can be seen. So for example, this spot height text can be removed off of the road so you can actually see where the spot height is referring to, as well as seeing the road in full. And now it's only over a contour, which is not as bad as it being obscuring a road and the spot height value itself. But once we're happy with that grid square, we would move along to the next one and make sure we're okay with that one too. Here, there doesn't look like there's too much to be done. This step will typically take the longest out of all of the steps of the cartographic editing, as each grid square will be inspected and you can spend up to a good 20 minutes on each kilometre square, making sure it is correct and legible. So when we're doing our square by square check and there's something we're still not 100% confident on how it is in real life, or if the photogrammetrists also have a similar feeling, they will flag it or we can flag it for the survey team. So here we're not sure how the Cambrian Way crosses this railway line, probably because it's in an area of woodland. So the canopy is obscuring where the path goes. So we will send our survey team who will be using GPS trackers so we can know exactly where the path goes, and they will be able to report back on the path type. When we've been through all the data and we're happy with every grid square, we can then send this on to our colleague who will then focus on the layout of the map.
So the first step when it comes to the layout actually happens right at the start before the photogrammetrists start plotting. We'll take the data that we have and we'll apply the kind of bounds of the new map. So in this case, obviously with the trail map, it's the route all the way through from North Wales to South Wales. And we'll make sure that it's going to fit basically. So we have our panel sizes and we know the dimensions of the most kind of common panel sizes, and we'll basically, like a jigsaw, we'll try and make it all fit onto one sheet. So with Cambrian Way, originally we had hoped to get it on one map, but it's because of the shape and size of it, it's too long, so it's going to be two sheets, Cambrian Way North and Cambrian Way South. The north map here is fairly straightforward, I would say, and then the southern half we've had to be a little bit more creative just because it's not your typical kind of shape. When it comes to doing the layout, we'll refer back to this initial plan that we made right at the start, and then we will build the kind of real life version. And the first step is just to put all these panels in place and make sure everything fits now that we've got the actual data in place. Once all the mapping's in place and we're happy with it and we're happy that it all fits and there's decent overlap between panels, we need to make sure there's enough space for all of the layout elements. So I have a file here. This is all of the stuff that we would typically include on a trail map. So it's quite a lot of stuff. And on the Welsh trail maps, we try and include a Welsh translation as well. So it's quite a lot of stuff to try and fit in. So it's just a case, again, kind of like a jigsaw, just placing the elements into this layout and making sure we have enough space for everything. Not only that, it's also important to make sure that it looks good and it's going to be the most kind of appropriate placement for the user. So for example, we'll always make sure on the cover side, when you're going to open up the map, the first panel we always want to be the start of the route. We'll try and include the introduction there. Once we're happy that everything fits, and once we're happy with the placement, we'll then go through and make it a bit more detailed. So we'll start measuring things and making sure it's all evenly spaced and it looks good and kind of smoothing out. And then the last kind of fiddly thing would be putting in all of the grid numbers on all of the panels.
So we're starting on the outskirts of Cardiff here. So we'll all drive to this car park, 3 of us in the car, and we'll drop Luke off here. So Luke can walk through the rolling green fields and woodland to Cross Keys. Meanwhile, Cameron, I think you're going to be the driver.
Yep.
And we'll drive off via Caerphilly, and you can drop me off in Cross Keys here. And then I will walk into over a bit of open land and finish up. Where am I finishing up? Pontypool. Meanwhile, your route, Cameron, I think you might have the longest one of the day tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it might be.
All the way from Pontypool to Abergavenny. It looks like quite a nice route, actually. You should get some nice views. Great. Happy?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm currently on the Cambrian Way. I've got my map boards with my waterproof paper and transparent film over it. And most importantly, my waterproof pen. As you can see, we go out in all weather. But we walk along our route, we divide it up each day as you would have seen us divide last night. And if we spot anything that needs amending, anything that's changing, at the moment I'm in a lot of tree cover. So often the photogrammetrists have a tricky time spotting beneath the trees. We're also wearing GPX watches tracking our routes, so we know the exact geography of the paths that we're walking underneath the canopy, so we'll walk all the trails in the woodland, in the dense woodland. Yeah, so I'm going to crack on and try and stay out this weather.
Morning. I'm on the Cambrian Way at the moment. It's bright and cold, but I have arrived halfway. Yay! That's just a little bit north of Strata, Florida.
This is day 3 of the survey, and after a few up and downs through farmland and along tracks, I've now emerged onto the open fell above the beautiful Glasl Inn.
Okay, so now we are going up to a very interesting part of the path. See the red dots here? This is the footpath. It is a pretty well made path, I think, so this is going to go down as a footpath, but this has been circled by the guys back in the office. Obviously we want to make sure that there is a way of crossing over this black line, which is a railway line. So I'm just approaching it now. Let's see what's on the ground. Here we are. We've just come to this level crossing. This is a narrow gauge railway line, and there we are. You can see there's a railway behind me. Okay, so now that we have ascertained that this is definitely a level crossing across here, I'll just mark that there. LC for level crossing, and this is definitely a path back to the footbridge that I crossed earlier, so when we're back in the office I'll mark this down as a path. When we come back from survey, we have a lot of map sheets like this with lots of notes written down upon it, and this is when we come back into the office and bring up the map on the screen, and we make our corrections to the master map based upon what we have seen in the field. So what I'm doing just now is, as I was walking along this track here, which is here, I noticed that the boundary fence is actually to the south of the track rather than to the north as we have it on the map here. So this is something which I'm going to correct.